By the time I saw that fake loan officer sitting at my kitchen table with forged documents, I finally understood why my daughter-in-law Joyce had called me at 6 a.m. with pure panic in her voice. "Gerald, please don't come home today," she whispered. "If you show up, they'll finish before you realize what's happening." I'm Gerald Thompson, 59 years old, and I thought I knew my son Leonard better than anyone. Boy, was I wrong. At my age, you learn to tell the difference between worry and fear. Joyce was terrified. The way her voice shook when she said they'll have everything signed before you can stop them, that wasn't normal stress. That was someone watching a train wreck about to happen. I stood in my buddy's kitchen that morning, holding the phone, thinking back to my birthday dinner the night before. Leonard had been acting strange all evening. Not bad strange, just different. He kept asking questions about my finances that seemed innocent enough at the time. You know how it is, your kid shows interest in the family stuff. You figure he's growing up, being responsible. But now, with Joyce's warning echoing in my head, those questions took on a whole different meaning. Let me back up a bit. I retired from Ford Motor Company 3 years ago after 35 years on the line, worked my way up to production supervisor. Started there when I was 24, fresh out of community college, with an associate's degree in industrial technology. Back then, you could still make a decent living in manufacturing, especially at Ford. The benefits were good, the pension solid, and if you worked hard and kept your nose clean, you had job security. My wife Margaret passed 2 years back. Cancer got her fast. Pancreatic. 6 months from diagnosis to the end. That woman was tougher than any foreman I ever worked under, but cancer doesn't care how strong you are. The house we bought in 1987 is paid off now, sitting on about $320,000 worth of property. Got a decent pension, $2,800 a month, plus what's left in my 401k after the 2008 mess. Not rich, but comfortable enough to live without worry. Margaret always said the most important thing we could leave our kids wasn't money. It was values. Work hard, be honest, take care of family. Simple stuff, but she lived it every day. She taught Sunday school for 15 years, never missed one of Leonard's baseball games, and could stretch a dollar further than anyone I knew. When she got sick, she made me promise to keep the house and the workshop exactly as they were. "That garage is your sanctuary," she said. "Leonard's going to need to learn from you there, just like you learned from your dad." I still miss her voice in the morning, the way she'd hum while making coffee. Leonard runs an auto repair shop called Thompson's Garage about 15 minutes from my place. Good kid, or so I thought, always been handy with cars, just like his old man. I taught him to change oil when he was 12, rebuild an engine by 16. We spent hundreds of hours in my garage working on everything from lawnmowers to that old 1987 Mustang GT I bought as a project car. Margaret would bring us sandwiches and sweet tea, complaining that we tracked grease through her kitchen but smiling when she said it. Leonard started his business 4 years ago with a $50,000 loan and big dreams, rented a bay at first, then expanded to 3 bays when customers started coming regular. Had 2 guys working for him, good mechanics, local boys I knew from the neighborhood. Things seemed to be going well enough. He was making payments, had steady customers, even talked about maybe expanding again. But lately, something had been off. The Sunday dinners at my place got less frequent. When Leonard did come by, he seemed distracted, always checking his phone, cutting conversations short. Joyce would make excuses. Busy season at the shop, equipment problems, nothing major. But a father notices when his son starts avoiding eye contact. The birthday dinner happened at my place last Thursday. I grilled burgers in the backyard, just like Margaret used to love. Leonard brought Joyce and their friends Norman Williams and some guy I'd never met before. Nothing fancy, just family time around the picnic table Margaret and I bought for Leonard's 10th birthday party. But Leonard kept steering the conversation toward money talk. "Dad, you ever think about updating your will?" he asked while I was flipping burgers on the grill. "I mean, with Mom gone, you probably should review everything." I shrugged, focusing on not burning the meat. Got it all handled. "Lawyer took care of it when your mother passed." Later, while we're eating at the table where Leonard used to do homework, he brought it up again. "The house is just in your name now, right? No trust or anything complicated?" "Why all the questions?" I asked, setting down my beer. Leonard smiled. That easy grin he's had since he was a kid stealing cookies from Margaret's jar. "Just want to make sure you're covered, you know? These days, you can't be too careful with estate stuff." My buddy Norman here was just telling me about his dad's situation. Got real messy when he passed because nothing was organized. Norman nodded along, but I noticed he didn't add anything to the conversation, just sat there eating my food and agreeing with whatever Leonard said. Joyce barely touched her food, kept glancing at Leonard, then down at her plate. I remember thinking she looked tired, maybe coming down with something. She'd been working extra shifts at the bank lately. trying to help with their finances while Leonard's business found its footing. After dinner, while we're cleaning up, Leonard asked if I still kept important papers in the office safe. I told him yes, same place they'd been for 20 years. Margaret had insisted we get that safe after our house got broken into back in '95. Nothing taken. But she wanted our birth certificates, insurance policies, and deeds somewhere secure. Smart, Leonard said. You should probably make copies though, keep them somewhere else too. What if something happened to the house? Then he excused himself to use the bathroom, but I noticed through the kitchen window that he went toward my home office instead. The office used to be Margaret's sewing room until she got sick, and I converted it to handle all the insurance paperwork and medical bills. When I found Leonard a few minutes later, he was standing near my desk, looking at the family photos on the wall. Just looking for some antacid, he said. When I walked in, burgers were great. But you know how it is? I didn't think much of it then, should have? That desk had been Margaret's writing desk where she paid bills every month, balanced our checkbook to the penny. She'd sit there Sunday evenings with her reading glasses and calculator, making sure every dollar was accounted for. After she passed, I couldn't bring myself to change anything. Her coffee cup was still in the drawer, along with her favorite pens, and that little address book where she kept everyone's birthday written in her careful handwriting. The next morning, Joyce's call changed everything. I was staying at my buddy Eddie's place because my hot water heater had been acting up. Eddie's a retired electrician, good guy, lives about 10 minutes from me. We'd planned to tackle the water heater repair together that morning. The phone rang at exactly 6 a.m. Eddie handed it to me, grumbling about people calling before decent hours, Gerald. Joyce's voice was barely a whisper. Please don't come home today. What's wrong? I sat up on Eddie's couch, suddenly wide awake. They're planning something. Leonard thinks you won't be back until evening. If you show up early, they'll finish everything before you can stop them. Finish what? The loan papers. Gerald, I found documents hidden in Leonard's truck last night. Home equity line of credit for $280,000. Your signature's already on some of them, but it's not your handwriting. My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step going downstairs. Are you sure? I've seen your signature 100 times on birthday cards and Christmas gifts. This isn't yours. There's a notary appointment scheduled for this afternoon at your house. Leonard told the woman you'd already agreed, but just needed to make it official for the bank. After I hung up, I sat in Eddie's kitchen for a long time, staring at the coffee getting cold. Eddie didn't ask questions, just sat across from me reading his paper and letting me think. That's the thing about old friends, they know when to talk and when to shut up. I kept thinking about the night Margaret died. Leonard had driven down from his apartment, stayed with me at the hospital through those last hours. When she finally let go around 3 a.m., Leonard held my hand and said, Dad, I promise I'll always take care of you, just like you took care of us. I believed him. Hell, I needed to believe him. Now I was wondering if that promise meant something different to Leonard than it did to me. Around 8 a.m., I drove straight to my lawyer Victor Martinez's office. Victor's been handling my legal stuff since Margaret got sick. Straight shooter, doesn't waste time with fancy talk or unnecessary fees. His office is in one of those old brick buildings downtown, second floor above a hardware store that's been there since I was a kid. I got a strange call this morning. I told him after explaining about Joyce's warning. My daughter-in-law says my son's planning to forge my signature on loan documents. Victor leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, like he does when he's thinking hard. That would be bank fraud. Federal crime. Tell me exactly what Joyce told you. I repeated everything, the hidden documents, the forged signature, the notary appointment. Victor pulled up my file on his computer, typing while I talked. Interesting, he said after a minute. Someone accessed the county records for your property late last night. The request came from an IP address registered to your home address. I wasn't near a computer after the party. I figured as much. He kept typing, frowning at his screen. There's more? A loan application was submitted this morning for a home equity line of credit on your property, $280,000. The application lists you as the borrower and your son Leonard as an authorized representative. I never applied for any loan, I know, but someone did using your personal information, social security number, employment history, everything. They even listed your pension income and estimated home value. Very thorough. Victor printed out some papers and handed them to me. There's also a notary appointment scheduled for 2 p.m. this afternoon at your house. I looked at the application. It was my information. All right. But the signature at the bottom looked like a child's attempt at copying my handwriting. Too careful, too deliberate. Margaret always said I signed my name like a doctor, fast and sloppy. This signature was neat, practiced. What do I do? I asked Victor. First, don't sign anything. Second, let me make some calls. If someone's trying to forge your signature on loan documents, that's fraud on multiple levels, bank fraud, identity theft, elder abuse. We're talking federal charges. Victor reached for his phone. I'm calling the bank security department first, then the county sheriff. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't just Leonard being desperate or making bad choices. This was my son planning to steal my house, the home where he'd grown up, where Margaret had made thousands of meals and helped him with homework and nursed him through chickenpox and broken hearts. The house I'd raised Leonard in, where Margaret had planted roses every spring, and where we'd taught him to ride a bike on the driveway. The house where she'd insisted we put that tire swing in the old oak tree because every boy needs a place to think. Leonard used to sit on that swing for hours, especially after we'd had words about his grades or chores. I went home around noon, driving slow, taking the long way past the elementary school where Leonard had gone to kindergarten. Margaret used to walk him there every morning until he was old enough to ride the bus. She'd pack his lunch in that old metal lunchbox with the Transformers on it, the one he'd begged for that Christmas when he was 6. Sure enough, there was an unfamiliar car in my driveway when I pulled up, a gray sedan with dealer plates. Through the living room window, I could see Leonard sitting at my kitchen table with a woman I didn't recognize. She had a briefcase open, papers spread out like she was conducting serious business. I parked down the street and called Victor. "They're here." "Don't go in yet," he said. "I just finished talking with bank security. They confirmed that loan application was filed fraudulently. The bank never contacted you for verification, which is required for equity loans of that size. Also, I checked with the state notary commission. The woman's license is legitimate, but she specializes in real estate closings. Very unusual for her to be doing a home visit for loan documents. So what does that mean? Could mean she's been lied to about the situation, or she's part of the scam. Either way, I'm calling the sheriff's department. Give me 10 minutes, then go in. Act normal, but don't sign anything. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Those 10 minutes felt like forever. I kept thinking about Leonard as a kid, how proud I was when he opened his shop, how he used to help me work on cars in the garage every weekend. Margaret would joke that we spent more time in that garage than in the house, but she never complained. She understood that working with your hands, fixing things that were broken, that was how men in our family connected. I taught Leonard everything I knew about engines, about taking apart something complicated and putting it back together better than before. Guess I forgot to teach him about taking apart a family. Finally, I walked up to my own front door and let myself in. The house smelled like coffee and the vanilla candles Margaret used to burn. Joyce must have lit one before she left for work. Leonard jumped up from the table when he heard me come in. "Dad, you're home early." The woman, turns out her name was Carol Davis, stayed seated. She had official-looking papers spread out in front of her, a notary stamp ready to go, one of those embossing seals that makes everything look important and legal. "Gerald Thompson," she asked. "Not getting up. I'm here for the loan documentation appointment." I looked at Leonard. His face had gone pale, like when he was 8 and I caught him breaking Margaret's good china playing baseball in the house. "What loan documentation?" "The home equity line of credit," Carol said, shuffling through her paperwork. "Your son Leonard arranged this. Said you needed to access some equity for family business expenses. Very straightforward process." "Dad," Leonard said, his voice cracking slightly. "I can explain everything. Have a seat." But I stayed standing. Something about the way Carol was avoiding eye contact bothered me. Professional notaries usually look you in the face when they're explaining legal documents. This woman kept her eyes on her papers like she was reading from a script. "The shop's in trouble," Leonard continued, moving around the table toward me. "Real trouble. I owe $280,000 between equipment loans, supplier bills, and rent. The bank's foreclosing next week unless I come up with collateral." "So you decided to use my house as collateral without asking?" Leonard's easy smile faltered. "I was going to tell you. I just needed to get the paperwork started. Once everything's approved and the shop is stable again, I can explain the whole situation properly. This is just temporary, Dad." I thought about Margaret's voice. "The most important thing isn't what you give them, Gerald. It's what you teach them to earn on their own." She'd said that when Leonard was 16 and wanted us to buy him a car instead of making him work for it. Temporary, I repeated. "Like when you were 12 and temporarily borrowed my tools without asking, then left them out in the rain?" Carol Davis was looking nervous now, glancing between Leonard and me like she was starting to realize this wasn't the simple family meeting she'd been told about. "Mr. Thompson," she said, "if you'd like to review these documents before we proceed." "I'd like to see some ID first," I said. She handed over her notary license. Looked official enough, but something about her attitude seemed off. Too eager, too pushy. Real professionals don't mind when people ask questions. "These papers show you've already signed a preliminary application," Carol continued, pointing to a document. "This is just the final authorization for the bank to process the loan." I looked at the signature she was pointing to. It was supposed to be mine, but it looked like someone had practiced it a dozen times before writing it down. too neat, too careful. When you've been signing your name for 59 years, you don't think about each letter. That's not my signature, I said. Leonard stepped closer. Dad, you signed those papers last week, remember? You said you wanted to help with the shop. That's when I realized what was happening. Leonard wasn't just desperate, he was trying to gaslight me into believing I'd already agreed to this, making me doubt my own memory, my own handwriting. Son, I said quietly, I've never seen these papers before in my life. That's when Victor walked in, and Leonard's face went completely white. Gerald, Victor said calmly, stepping into my kitchen like he owned the place. I need to speak with you privately. Leonard looked like he'd seen a ghost. Carol Davis started shuffling papers back into her briefcase faster than a card dealer in Vegas. Actually, Victor continued, not moving toward the living room. Let's all stay right here. Carol, I just got off the phone with the State Notary Commission. They're very interested in your recent activities. Carol stopped packing. I don't understand. Bank fraud investigations tend to make people nervous, Victor said, especially when the FBI gets involved. That word FBI hit the room like a sledgehammer. Leonard sat down hard in one of Margaret's kitchen chairs, the same chairs where he'd eaten breakfast every morning before school. There's been some misunderstanding, Carol said, but her voice had lost all its professional confidence. Victor pulled out his phone and set it on the table. This is Detective Williams from the county sheriff's office. He's been listening to our conversation. The phone crackled with static, then a man's voice. Ms. Davis, we need you to remain where you are. Officers are en route. Carol grabbed her briefcase and headed for the door, but Victor blocked her way. Ma'am, leaving now would be considered fleeing the scene of a crime. She stopped, briefcase clutched against her chest like armor. Leonard finally found his voice. Dad, you don't understand how bad this is. I'm going to lose everything. The shop, the equipment, maybe even the house Joyce and I live in. I put up personal guarantees on the business loans, so you thought you'd risk my house to save yours. I was desperate. I figured once the shop got back on its feet, I could pay everything back. You'd never even know the difference. But I would know, I said, eventually. That's when Leonard played his last card. The thing is, I already told some people this was happening. The bank, the suppliers, if this falls through now, they're going to want their money immediately. Like tomorrow, Victor stepped forward. Leonard, are you threatening your father? No, I'm just explaining the situation. If Dad doesn't help me, a lot of bad things are going to happen real fast. It sounds like you're saying bad things will happen if he doesn't sign. Leonard realized how that sounded. That's not what I meant. The police arrived 10 minutes later. 2 officers, one older guy who reminded me of the security guards at Ford, one younger woman who looked like she could handle herself in any situation. They separated us into different rooms, Leonard and Carol in the living room, me and Victor in the kitchen. Mr. Thompson, the older officer, said, "Can you tell us what happened here today?" I told them everything, starting with Joyce's call, the forged documents, the fake notary appointment. Victor handed over the paperwork he'd printed at his office. Your son's in serious trouble, the officer said after reviewing everything. Bank fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud. If Miss Davis was knowingly participating, she's looking at federal charges too. Through the doorway, I could hear Carol talking fast, her voice getting higher and more desperate. I was told this was a routine family loan. Leonard said his father had already agreed but needed help with the paperwork because of memory issues. Memory issues. That hit me like a punch to the stomach. Leonard had told people I was losing my mind. The younger officer came into the kitchen. Miss Davis is cooperating. Turns out your son hired her for $500 cash to notarize documents he said you'd already agreed to sign. She claims she didn't know the signatures were forged. What about Leonard? I asked. He's not talking. Wants a lawyer. The legal stuff moved faster than I expected. The prosecutor charged Leonard with attempted bank fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy within a week. The evidence was overwhelming: forged signatures, fake loan applications, recorded phone calls that Joyce had made during the weeks leading up to the incident. Turns out Joyce had been documenting Leonard's increasingly desperate behavior for almost a month. She'd recorded conversations where Leonard talked about getting the old man to cooperate and using the house to solve everything. In one recording, you could hear Leonard telling Norman Williams, "Once I get him to sign, the bank problem goes away. He won't even miss the money." In another, "If he won't cooperate, I'll just say he's getting confused. Who's going to believe a 59-year-old retiree over his own son?" The trial lasted 3 days. Leonard's court-appointed lawyer tried to argue that it was a family misunderstanding, that Leonard genuinely believed I would have agreed if I'd understood the situation, but the recordings made his intentions pretty clear. Joyce testified on the second day. She looked smaller somehow, sitting at that witness table, but her voice stayed steady while she explained what she'd discovered and why she'd called to warn me. Leonard told me his father would understand once the business was saved, she said. But when I saw the forged signatures, I knew Gerald would never have agreed to risk his retirement security. Leonard got 18 months in county jail, 5 years probation, and had to pay $15,000 in court costs and restitution. His shop closed before the trial even started. Word travels fast in the auto repair business, and nobody wants to deal with someone facing fraud charges. Joyce filed for divorce before Leonard was sentenced. She moved back with her parents, took her maiden name back. I felt terrible for her. She tried to do the right thing, tried to protect me, but her marriage was still over. I see her sometimes at the grocery store. She always stops to say hello, asks how I'm doing. We don't talk much about Leonard, but I can tell she still feels guilty about the whole thing. I keep telling her she saved me from losing everything Margaret and I worked for. The house is quiet now. I still go out to the garage most evenings, work on small projects, organize tools, but it's different. Used to be, I'd picture teaching Leonard's kids someday, showing them how to use these same tools, passing down what my father taught me. That's not happening now. Leonard sent me a letter from jail about 8 months ago, said he was sorry, said he'd made terrible mistakes, asked if we could talk when he got out. I read it twice and put it in the drawer with Margaret's things. Haven't answered it yet, maybe someday, but not now. Trust isn't something you can rebuild with an apology letter. These days, I keep all my important papers in a safety deposit box at the bank. Changed all my passwords, had Victor update my will to be crystal clear about everything. I'm more careful now about who has access to what. The workshop stays locked when I'm not using it. Seems silly, but I've learned that family can hurt you deeper than strangers ever could. Sometimes I think about what Margaret would say about all this. She always believed in forgiveness, in giving people second chances. But she also believed in protecting what you'd worked for and not enabling people who refuse to help themselves. I think she'd understand why I haven't written Leonard back yet, and I think she'd be proud that I didn't let him steal our home. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones most willing to destroy what you've spent a lifetime building, but protecting yourself from that betrayal isn't giving up on family. It's honoring the values that made your family worth protecting in the first place. The hardest lesson a father learns isn't that his children might fail, it's that they might choose to fail at your expense. And sometimes loving them means refusing to enable the very behavior that's destroying them.